Madu upon you while you awesome stand and face Jerusalem. The blessing of the new moon. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Asherah, Bethelanawa, Hakdash, Ba'shalawam, Thowada, Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahushai, that gives to us the new moon in peace. Thank you, so be it. Taha'ayim Ba'ad Asherayim Akkad, Psalm 121. Anya, Harayim, Ayanyam Ya, Oh, Haharayim, Mayan, Yabu'a, Isaiah, Yabu'a, Mayahawa, Shaisha, Shemayim, Wa'aratiza, La'a, Yanathan, Lamawat, Regalia, Yala'a, Yanawum, Shashamarka, Hana, Ma'a, Yanawum, Wala'a, Yayishun, Shashuma, Yashirallah, Yahweh, Shemaya, Yahweh, Tazalia, I, Ya, Yam, Yawamum, Hashamash, La'a, Hakaya, Wairat, La'a, Balayala, Yahweh, Yashmaya, Makal, Ra, Yashma, Napasha, Yahweh, Yashma, Hawalakya, Wabawaya, Ma'aitha, Wa'ai, Daiwalam, Basham, Yahweh, Thawada, Amen.
Psalms 121, a song of degrees. I will lift up mine eyes into the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Shema Yasharallah, Hero Israel. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Haynawa, Yahweh, Akkad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Haynawa, Yahweh, Akkad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Haynawa, Yahweh, Akkad.
Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen.
Amen. Stop like Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abba Yanawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Kodash, Haya, Shamka, Yahweh, Malaklatka, Saba'a, Ratazawanka, Haya, Aisha, Ba'aratiza, Ka, Bashamayim, Nathalanawa, Lakam, Gawum, Za, Wasalaklanawa, Kababathnawa, Kasalaknawa, Kababathyanawa, Wala'a, Habayanawa, O Messiah one, Abo, Hawashinawa, Marah, Kiyah, Laka, Hamalakwa, Waha'ala, Wahatha Pa'ara, La'aywalam, Amen.
Matthew 6:9. After this man therefore pray you, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Amen. Ha'aisha Ramataz, the world of the Ten Commandments. La'a,
La'a,
Yahaya,
Yahaya,
Laka,
Laka,
Alahayim,
Alahayim,
Akarim,
Alpanya,
Alpanya, La'a, Thaisha, Laka, Paso, Wala'a, Thaibadum, La'a, Talakwaka, Shamwa, Yahweh, Alahayaka, Lashua, Zakar, Ath, Hayawum, Hashabath, Lakwadashwa, Chabad, Abiakar, Wa'amaka, La'a, Taratazak, La'a, Sana'at, La'a, Zaganab, La'a, Tha'ina, Shakur, La'a, Lakhamad, Ko, Asherah, Lara'aika, Aman.
Deuteronomy 5:7. Thou shalt have none other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters beneath the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thine ox, nor thine ass, nor any of thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest as well as thou. And remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. Honor thy father and thy mother as the Lord thy God commanded thee, that thy days may be prolonged, and that it may go well with thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, neither shalt thou commit adultery, neither shalt thou steal, neither shalt thou bear false witness against thy neighbor, neither shalt thou desire thy neighbor's wife, neither shalt thou covet thy neighbor's house, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything that is thy neighbor. Amen.
Aman. Yeshua, be seated. Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathalanawa, Par Yahagabin, Tawada Aman, La Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Ath, Yasha Allah. English translation: Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it, to Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai with Israel. I marked up upon your Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakatah Yahweh, Hagadol, Rakhawam, Abiyah, Wanara'ah, Aliyawan, Malat, Shol, Shemayim, Wa'aratazah, Wako, Debarim, Kayayim, Wagum, Hamashiach, Mayahawa, Arawanawa, Ahabnawa, Apalah, Yawa'itazah, Yahweh Shai, Zakarnawa, Yahweh, Baratazawan, Aimka, Yasha Allah, Izanawa, Bana, Wasap, Yasha Allah, O, Nanawa, Yum Yun, Aitha, Kayawamyam, Makodam, Baba Kusha, Shalat, Mayaka'ala, Wahataz Wadak, Alahayim, La, Maganawa, Rapanawa, Washamar, Alnawa, Ba'ikwa, Shalat, Harocha, Sho, Yahweh Shai, Lanawa, Lalamanawa, Rabim, Kakama, Sabawana, Wada'ith, Shal, the Baraka. Bahasham, Yahushai, Thawada, from Yad, Wa'iwalam, Amun. English translation. Blessed are Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth, and all things living. And also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember us, Yahweh, favorably, your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel. Most high, we beg you. Right now, like the days of old, please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you always and forever. So be it. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives us the law. Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Betalanawa, Athawara. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Betalanawa, Awar, Lara'awah. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the rams on the call of people. Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Betalanawa, Korun, Ha'ayah, La Korah, Ha'ain. Shabbat, be seated. Okay, shalom, shalom. Peace and blessings to the brothers and sisters listening on the teleconference, watching on the live stream, and to the Akim that's here. Ashar Kadash, or Happy New Moon. This is a non-traditional, what we would call, quote unquote, a 13th new moon. I know there was some confusion because we stated a couple months back and provided the calendar and a listing of what would be the beginning of our new year. With further research and checking and doing due diligence, we found out that we had to include another new moon before we actually get to the beginning of our new year, which kind of threw some people off in the previous classes. So we said we kind of just try to touch on it a little bit here in tonight's new moon service to kind of give further understanding about why we had to include that. So again, we'll touch on that, but this is, like I said, one of those non-traditional, 13th new moons. But I guess when we now understand how the Most High has a cycle and the seasons operating, we always have to take this into account. So this is Hayashral Kanas. Peace and blessings to the other brothers in camps throughout the four corners, putting in the work, laboring to the best of their abilities, and as well as those who may not be out there in the highways and byways, but still keeping the Most High's laws to the best of their abilities where they are at home and doing what they can as far as for edifying and spreading this truth. Again, all praise, of course, goes to the Most High Yahweh Shai for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that's bestowed upon us here in these last days. So I'm going to start off with Ecclesiasticus 43. Ecclesiasticus chapter 43. Yakazak, if you can do the reading for this chapter for me, Baba Kusha. I'm going to start off in verse 6. Just let me know when you get it. All right, so Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 and verse 6, Baba Kusha.
And it reads, he made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of time and the sign of the world.
Right. So we gone over this verse many times to understand that the moon is used as a tool. It's a vessel, it's a spirit inside of it that's used to provide a sign to those, to man and women that's on the earth, to declare certain things, whether it be feast days or events and things that may happen in the earth, right? But in the vein of what we're discussing for this added new moon, it now kind of brings more further clarity to this, right? So read it one more time.
Verse 6, he made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of time and the sign of the world.
Right. So the moon was supposed to serve in the season, right? It has to now provide some type of information in the season that it's going to come forth in, right? Whole list. Let's go to Genesis, the first chapter. Let's go to Genesis, the first chapter. Start at Genesis 1 and 3. Genesis 1 and 3. Let me know anybody got it. So in Genesis 1 and 3, it says, and God said, or the Elohim, let there be light, and there was light. Verse 4, and God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. Verse 5, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day, right? So here it is, when it comes into the creations, here on this day, the Most High is now already signifying and determining a day and a night. Now, at this point, was the moon around? Was the moon created? Was the sun created? Say again?
I would say yes.
You would say yes. All right. So now let's jump forward to the 14th verse. Verse 14 says, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And he made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, right? So it hadn't been created yet. And that's the misconception, that when the Most High created day, that it's the sun that was now providing the daylight for man or for things that was in the earth. But according to the Most High's word, the moon and the sunlight and the constellation of stars didn't come to several days later in the creation, right? So now we have a distinction between a day and a light that's now serving in that day, right? So now let's jump back. Let's go to verse 11, right? Let's jump back into verse 11. What we're about to read here in verse 11 is now getting into the third day, before when the sun and the moon and the constellations and all of those things are created, which is the fourth day. So this is what it says for the third day of creation. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind, and God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. So now in the Most High's creation, we see that the Lord now, before animals are on the earth, before man is on the earth, he had to do what? He had to now provide food, right? He had to provide the fruits and the vegetables and things of that nature so that when they are created, they can now have something to eat on, right? The carnivores, of course, are going to be animals of prey. They're going to prey on other types of beasts or fish or birds. But those who are herbivores, they would now have needed to have food on the earth prior to their existence. So here in the third day, the Most High now sets these things in motion. He sets the cycle up. But now we now know for today, for things to grow in the earth, what has to happen? It happens in what? Different seasons, right? Crops come in different seasons. You have certain things that come in the beginning of the harvest season and certain other things that come in the ending of the harvest season. Like we know during the Passover time, we get what type of harvest? What's the harvest that comes in the Passover? You said what? Fruit. But what fruit is the type of a specific one that we know during the Passover that we read about in the scriptures? Begins with a B. Ends with a Y. Has an L. The barley harvest, right? That's in the beginning. That's what we'll read about when the Passover comes. It's the barley harvest. Then when you get towards the ending of the harvest season, that's where you get your wine and your grapes and your figs and things of that nature. But now that all happens during different types of seasons. Remember what we were talking about before when I was getting on this trip about watermelons, right? Watermelons supposed to grow in a certain part of the season. It doesn't grow all year round. It has to have a certain type of climate for it to now be harvested, right? So this was already done prior to the sun and the moon even being in creation. So the Most High already had these things formed already. The cycle was already producing itself. Then he created these things to rule in those days and times, to provide a sign for man on earth. So when you see the sun out, oh, it's daytime. When the moon's out, it's called nighttime, right? And then you have the constellations to serve another purpose, right? So now here it is. We see that these things are already done prior to the moon. So the moon didn't affect seasons. These things was in motion, right? So now let's go back to Ecclesiasticus chapter 43, where we started from. Let's go back to Ecclesiasticus 43. All right, so Yakazak, read that again, verse 6.
Verse 6. He made the moon also serve in her season for a declaration of time and a sign of the Lord.
Right, so the moon that comes around in certain seasons is now going to do what? Declare time. Remember that, because we're going to read the scriptures later on in a little while where this is now being referenced. So this is going to serve in her season for a declaration of time and a sign of the world. Read on.
Verse 7. For the moon is the sign of the feast.
So it says, from the moon is the sign of feast. Why does it say from the moon is the sign of feast? Why does it say that? Yes, because the Most High now notifies us and tells us what time the feast will begin on what day based on when we signify and determine the new moon, right? And then that's how we get our calendar year. So that's why it says that here in the scriptures, from the moon is a sign of feast, meaning Passover, first fruits, Pentecost, Day of Atonement, Memorial blowing the trumpets, Fat Tabernacles, Hanukkah. All of these things are determined by the moon in its season, right? Read on.
Verse 8. The month is called after.
I think you skipped. Read 7 again.
For a moon is the sign of peace,
Uh-huh.
and a light that declares in her perfection.
Decreaseth in a perfection, meaning what? What does it mean when it says the light that decreaseth in its perfection?
It changes.
Right, the different phases of the moon. Right? And what are those phases of the moon signifying?
Change in the season.
Change in the season, not the season. Because it's something that, you know, growing up in society, you know, we saw the moon as a kid, as an adult. Right now, we look up and well, you're not going to see it now because it's a new moon. But when you now in the nighttime and you're seeing the different phases of the moon, most of us don't realize what that's really signifying. Give me 1 second. Most of us don't know what that's signifying. So the Bible now is going to tell us what it means when you see the different phases of the moon, right? Right, the quarter, the crescent, what does that all mean? It's moving in a certain direction.
Letting us know that there's a change in, I'm not sure.
All right, so when you now see the phase of the moon, like right now, it's because it's the new moon, you don't see the new moon now. It's on this dark side. Once you start to see the crescent on the moon, that's now getting into the days of the month, right? Just by observing the moon, you'll begin to now go into your days of the month to your weeks of the month, right? So that first crescent is like your second, third day of the first week of that month. When you get to a half moon with the right side, because everything starts from right to left. So when you see from right to left and it's halfway full, means what? Halfway around. But what does that mean to us on the earth? That means a week has gone by in our month, right? A week has gone by in the month. That's the phase of the moon. The phase of the moon is giving us the time of month that we're in. So we don't have to have the phone, the calendar, or the app on your phone, or go look at we now can just look at the moon and say, in this month, we are within the first week of the month, from right to left when it's illuminated. When it's now all the way illuminated, you have a full moon, it's the middle of the month. 2 weeks have gone by. Now, when the moon starts to go and decrease where it's dark and it's halfway full, now that's 3 weeks in. Now, when you start to see that moon start to go almost all the way dark or black from right to left, now you're starting to get towards the ending of the month. And once that crescent is gone, now you're in a new moon. Now you're in a new month, right? So if you didn't have the tools, you have the tools. That's why the Most High gave us these lights to rule in the day and in the night, to give us the time of day and time of month. That's what these things do. It's not just providing us light in the day. It's not just providing us heat. It's not just night, guiding us when it's pitch black outside. No, it's telling us things, right? For the sun, that's why they call it a sundial when you go to certain areas, because when they have certain structures and you look at the shadow, they can say, oh, we at the middle of the day. Oh, it's almost the ending of the day. Oh, I can see the sun is about to set. The day is about to come to an end, right? So this is where the Most High now gets into allowing us to use his his angel-made creations to help us on the earth, to tell us what's going on, right? So read verse 7 again.
Verse 7. For the moon is the sign of peace,
Uh-huh.
and light that decreases in her perfection.
Come on.
The month is called after her name,
Mm-hmm.
increasing wonderfully in her changing, bringing an instrument of Aries above, shining in the fulfillment of the heaven.
So it says, firmament. It says the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven, right? So it's an instrument, it's a tool, it's a vessel being in the firmament of heaven to shine, right? To increase, to decrease, to give us those phases, but to do it with perfection. It doesn't, sometimes we get into a point where, you might be late for work. You might not be here on time. You might not get there on time. You might not wake up on time. But guess what? The moon and the sun is going to be perfect. It's going to be always on time according to the Most High's time. It's never going to be late, right? So this is where we now are looking for the Lord's help in giving us guidance in the earth, and that's what the moon does, right? So now, how does this correlate? Because I wanted to hone in on to serve in her season for a declaration of time as it pertains to right now. So technically, right now, we are not in the spring season yet. Hasn't started, right? So if we would have signified and said, this is the beginning of the month of the year, then we would have been a bit early because spring ain't come in yet. Why is that important, right? Let's go to the book of Exodus. Let's go to the book of Exodus. Remember, these vessels are serving in their appointed time, like the moon and the sun are serving in the day and the night. The day and the night didn't come after the new moon or after the sun. They were there. These things are serving in their time. So now let's go to Exodus chapter 9. And verse 22. Exodus 9 and 22. Let me know when everybody got it. So Exodus 9:22 says that the Lord said unto Moses, stretch forth thine hand toward heaven, and there may be hail in the land of Egypt upon man and upon beast, and upon every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched forth his rod toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and the fire ran along upon the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with hail, very grievous, such as there was none like it in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. So hail is what? What is hail? Little ice rocks, right? But now these ice rocks have what in it? Fire. Right? So it's coming down from heaven as hail. When it's in a certain time, you got to pelt in the cars and coming all down on the ground. But when it does that, depending on the temperature, it'll, be all over the place, but then it just starts to melt. Right? But in this case, the Lord said that he was going to send the hail down coming from the heavens with such a speed, because it's going to be very cold when you come down, when the temperature is coming from the outer atmosphere. Right? That's when you go up, if you ever flown in a plane and you on the plane and you look at the monitor and tell you the temperature degrees, it'd be like -50, -70 something degrees Fahrenheit. You're like, man, that's cold, right? Because it's that atmospheric pressure that's out there. But now as it comes down, right, it still has fire in it. So now when it hits the ground, its purpose is to do what? What was the Most High's purpose for this hail? To burn what? Not the people. What in the ground? Let's read it again, right? It says, and the Lord said unto Moses, stretch forth thine hand toward heaven, and there shall be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man and upon beast, and upon every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt. So it's man, it's and herbs, right? So that's why I'm focusing on. Man and herbs. I'm focusing on the herb. Why am I focusing on the herb? Why am I focusing on the herb? Remember, we're dealing with the new moon and why we are now not in the beginning of our year, right? And I just stated a little while that spring technically has not started yet, right? We have not gotten that signifying we are now in the spring season, right? So here we at the time when the Most High was plaguing the earth and he's sending down hail, but it's now going to, be hitting on man. It's going to hit on beasts, but it's going to do what to the herbs? Destroy. It's going to burn it up, right? For it to destroy and burn up the herbs, what had to have happened already? They had to grow up. The season had to been in where this crop was now grown already, so that this thing could now come and burn up these crops, right? So now that's what it says here, verse 23. And Moses stretched forth his rod toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and the fire ran along upon the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt, right? So there was hail and fire mingled with the hail, very grievous, such as there was none like it in all the land of Egypt, since it became a nation. Here we go. And the hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast, and the hail smote every herb of the field and break every tree of the field. So now you got winter season. You may have trees. I got trees still in my backyard through the winter, but I don't have herbs and vegetables and things growing up during that period of time. It doesn't happen until the season changes in the springtime. So this is what was going on here in Egypt. Spring had already happened for it to now have had herbs and crops growing. Which crops are we now dealing with here that the Most High is now destroying in the land of Egypt? Let's jump down. Verse 29. It says, and Moses said unto him, as soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread abroad my hands unto the Lord, and the thunder shall cease, neither shall there be any more hail, that thou mayest know how that the earth is the Lord. So now after pleading this case, Pharaoh pleading this case to Moses, Moses then goes back to the Most High, and the Most High is now going to ease himself from this plague upon the Egyptians, so that they know that the power rests with the Most High and the Most High only. So now as the Most High is about to stop from allowing the hail to come on the ground, what does it say? It says, but as for thee and thy servants, I know that ye will not yet fear the Lord God. And the flax and the barley was smitten. For the barley was in the ear and the flax was bald, right? So now what is this verse saying? What is this verse telling us? And the flax and the barley was smitten, for the barley was in the ear and the flax was bald. What does it mean? You mean, well, why was it done? For the flax and the barley was smitten. This is easy. Was smitten. Why was it smitten? What smote it? Right. What smote the flax and the barley? The hail. Right. The Most High put the hail down. So now after the aftermath, after the Most High stopped it, because when the hail is coming down, it's hitting man, it's hitting beasts, it's burning up the crops. What are the people going to do? They're going to be like, oh, no, they're going to try to run for cover, right? So Pharaoh pleaded to Moses, say, can you stop? Can you stop? And the Most High gives mercy and stops. So now after everything is done, they come out to see what's going on. It's like a hurricane come through. What do? After the hurricane and the tornadoes leave, you come out and you survey the land. He said, Dad, look how they destroyed the whole trailer park, right? Look how they destroyed all these houses. You survey the land. So now they're coming out and they're looking and saying, look, the flax and the barley destroyed, right? The flax and the barley is destroyed. The flax and the barley grows when? in what season? In the spring season, right? Now watch this. Listen to the next verse. This is why it's good to pay attention to not only just the feast days that we keep, but the season and the things surrounding it that happens in our feast days. Now watch this. Verse 32. We had Exodus chapter 9 and verse 31, but now we're going into 32. So now in verse 32, it says, but the wheat and the rye were not smitten. Why were the wheat and the rye not smitten? It says, for they were not grown up. Meaning what? It wasn't the time. It wasn't the harvest time for wheat yet. Now, when does wheat grow? In the what? In the summer. What feast day comes around the time of the wheat harvest that we keep? Go to Exodus chapter 34. Go to Exodus chapter 34. Exodus chapter 34 and verse 22. Exodus chapter 34 and verse 22. Ariel, you read that, Baba Kushar. And 22.
Exodus chapter 34, verse 22. And thou shalt observe the feast of weeks of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end.
Right. So now that's two different feast days in that one verse. It says the feast of weeks, which is of the first fruits of the wheat harvest. That happens in the summertime, right? The first fruits happens in the summertime around the time of the wheat harvest, right? And then after it, it says, and the feast of ingatherings at the year's end, not at the end of the year, but at the end of the harvest season. That happens when? What season is this happening?
In the winter, in the fall.
At the what?
In the fall.
Well, in fall, right? As right before winter, in the fall season, that's when the ingatherings is kept, right? Remember, we always say we have high holy days in every season. There's one in the spring, there's one in the summer, there's one in the fall, and there's one in the winter. A lot of the other ones are solemn assembly Sabbaths that we keep, like the Day of Judas, Day of Simon, blowing of the trumpets, right? But the high holy days where the Lord said he wants all males to appear is in every season. So now we're reading about here during a time when we were in captivity in Egypt. We are reading about the Most High plaguing the Egyptians and it smiting all of their barley crop, right? Because it had already harvested, right? Now, it talks about the wheat harvest that didn't happen yet because that's later on in the spring. So we're in the 9th chapter reading about harvests that happen now in the spring season, right? Now, watch this. Watch what the Most High does. Go to Exodus chapter 12. Go to Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. But quiet if you could read that, Baba Kashab.
Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you.
So now, here it is. That plague of fire and hailstorm and all of that already happened already, right? So the new moon didn't come before the spring season and say, hey, this new moon comes in and we're now classifying and said, this is the spring. The season came in, and then the Most High later on says, hey, this time we're in, this month right now, this is the beginning of your months, right? And we had to have that known to us because we spent so much time in Egypt as a nation following Egyptian calendar and Egyptian philosophy. Now the Most High is bringing us out of that and bringing us back to our natural customs. So he says here that this is the beginning of your months. So now when we understand that the season comes in, and then once the season comes in, that new moon that begins after that season comes in is where we start. So right now, if you go on your calculator, your cell phone, you go and Google real quick and find out, well, when does the spring season begin, right? It's going to say for 2021, usually on average, what date? March 20th, right? Which is next week or towards the end of the next week. I can't remember what date it is, right? But that's when the spring season is supposed to start, right? So once the spring season then starts, that new moon that now comes in when it now comes around is the beginning of the month, like the Most High just did with Moses and the children of Israel at that time, right? That's when we begin to count. Read it again, Pequod.
And then the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their father.
Right. So now the season happened, and now the Lord is letting us know when that moon comes in, which is the first one. Now you start counting 10 days after that, right? So we can't be confused into thinking that the month determined the season. No. The season was there even before when the Most High's creation in the beginning in Genesis. The seasons had to already have been around for the crops and things to grow. The barley had to happen in its season. The wheat had to happen in its season. The figs and the grapes and things had to happen in their season. And then the Most High created the moons and the sun to give light and rule in the earth, right? So we got to make sure that we now put that into its proper fit. So that's the beauty of wisdom, right? So a lot of times when we deal with the scriptures, we think that when we come into the truth, that sometimes everything comes at one time, right? No, we evolve. The Most High is dealing and nurturing us to bring us up to a certain point, to bring us to perfection. So certain things that we learned back when it was 2010, we've learned more of it now in 2020 and then beyond. When I first came in the 90s, around that time, there were certain things that we was doing that we wouldn't even think of doing right now. But at the time when we was doing them, it was just fine, right? We didn't have that full understanding of what the Most High's true perfection for us to do in the earth as servants was at that time. But he groomed us, right? Sometimes you see a child and the child is doing certain things and you're like, okay, when he get a little bit older, I'm going to have that talk with him or her, right? Right now, he or she can't get it right now. They're not going to fully understand it. So they got to go through a little bit more, and then I'm going to come and have that talk, and then I'm going to come and show them certain things. So sometimes that's what happens with the truth. It's not to knock the word and knock the Most High. I'm like, oh, man, why you ain't tell me? Because if it would have been given to you at a certain point in time, you may not have been able to receive it then, right? Experience allows us to now go through some things and then be patient and rest with this truth. Right. So now, like I said, we now can rely on Esau's technology to kind of help us out. But before Esau and the Farmer's Almanac and these things was around, what did we have? What did we have? Huh? Right. We had the things, tools all around us already. Right. Watch this. Go to First Chronicles. First Chronicles chapter 12. First Chronicles chapter 12. 12 and 32. Kahanabiyah Baba Shah, if you can read that.
This is 1 Chronicles 12 and 32. And it reads, and the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do. The heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandment.
Right. So it said that the children of Issachar, who are the who today? So-called Mexicans, right? Aztecs, so forth and so on. It says, and the children of Issachar, which were men that had the understanding of the times, right? Times of what? Times and seasons. So the Most High gave certain of our men within our nation, within our tribes, to be able to understand what things was going on at certain points in the year, right? So these guys was able to look into the heavens, to look at the seasons and the temperature and understand the winds and understand these things, and then do what? Guide the nation, right? That was a spirit that the Lord had on these men to do that. So when they were looking up into the heavens and they were looking up at the stars, they could look at these things like a map and then decipher them and then give Israel the guidance on now how we are now supposed to go and structure what we need to do for the upcoming year, right? This is before these tools that Esau has and his technologies. Man was given the spirit to do these things. And we're reading that what the children of Issachar had in their possession at their times to be able to do these things, right? Go to the book of Job. Go to the book of Job, the 38th chapter. Job chapter 38. And verse 31. Ariel, if you could read that, Baba Kasha.
Job chapter 38, verse 31. Canst thou bind the sweet influence of the
Pleiades,
or lose the bands of Orion? 32. Canst thou bring forth Mazaroth in his season, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons?
So now, who knows what this is talking about? Say again. Bring forth Mazaroth in his seasons. But what is this? What is Job getting into yet when he's talking about these things? Who knows what these things are? Kahanabiyah. The zodiac, the constellations. Exactly, right? So when we start talking about the scriptures in the Bible, right? A lot of times people just think that these are just, good stories and, hallelujahs and things of that nature. But science is here in the scriptures. The Most High lets you know the things that these people go out there and go to college for, and it's all of his creation. So when it starts off, it says, canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades or loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazaroth in his season, or canst thou guide Actarus with his sons? So, you know, sometimes when the people, you look at the astrologers and they start now mapping out the stars, like how they say it's the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper. This thing looks like a man that's about to go and fight somewhere. So they start drawing out or connecting the dots to make it now make sense to them. So the Lord is saying, listen, I'm the one who created this. So can you really bring out the influences, meaning bring out the wisdom of what's in the heavens? Because there's a lot of information that's there. That's why you have people who call themselves astrologers, or who like to go and read the stars and give you your fortune based on astrology and your Cancer and your this and your that. This information, according to the right spirit, is something that can guide the nation, like the children of Issachar, those men were skilled to do, right? But not everybody has this. Not everybody is fortunate to have this gift to do that. The Lord can pull that gift from you, and Satan can have you now go and take these same tricks and go on the left-hand side, right? And that's what happened. For every righteous thing that's out here, there's a wicked to follow right beside it, right? And that's what we have. But in the scriptures, the Most High is letting you know that he's created this, and there's knowledge, wisdom, and understanding even behind the constellation. What would you say? Exactly, right? The Aztec calendar and how they even go off. Actually, I might pull up a video that kind of shows how they've used some of these same things and going off on it. I can see if I can find it. But read verse 33.
Verse 33. Knowest thou the ordinance of heaven?
Mm-hmm.
Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth?
Check that out. It says, knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Meaning the Most High has certain things in order in the heaven with the sun, moon, and the constellations, right? So that's why you have telescopes and things that's pointed out there to try to understand what's going on in outer space. But now it says, who can understand the ordinances of heaven, and then canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Meaning, read what's going on there and have that now be set in order on the earth. Who can do this? Right now, this is not saying that, you know, we need to go out there and go take some class at some community college or go to some other college and say, okay, well, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna fulfill this. I'm gonna be able to be knowledgeable to set this in order. No, right? Because this comes from the Most High. We don't go to the theological school or what have you to come and understand the Lord's infinite wisdom in the Bible or according to his spirit. We just follow his precepts, and then it comes. Then the Most High sends the angels to you to minister to you, to give you that spirit. So then if you now want to have a gift, the gifts all come from the Most High. If the Most High sees fit that the Most High is going to have Kahan Nabiyah, now wake up one morning and all of a sudden, boom, he's like, yo, I was out one night and the Most High was showing me something and I'm looking at this and I'm pulling out of Isaiah. And now it makes sense where, okay, the Lord is not working with this brother. Same way he worked with Daniel, he worked with this one, and he worked with Joseph to now set certain things in order according to the gifts that were given them. But now don't go to that hut or that shop that someone is charging you to say, hey, let me want me to read this, because they're not in the spirit. How do you know they're not in the spirit? Because they're not following these precepts. They're not going according to this. The scriptures say, try the spirit by the spirit. The spirit of the Most High is in the Bible. Right? The Holy Spirit, the truth is according to his law. So anybody that's dealing with anything, they must be keeping this law or trying to the best of their ability to keep this law. If they now want to go and now show you or counsel you on certain gifts that they have, and they're not going in according to this, you have to be very, very wary of that. Now, with these gifts, right, with Issachar and these tribes now learning these signs and things, and you know what was going to happen? It was going to go to hell off, right? Who was going to go off? Because with great, what is that line in Spider-Man? With great power come with great responsibility, right? So you have this gift, but you have to still do certain other things. And once you start forgetting that, then things go awry, right? Go to Deuteronomy chapter 4. Oh, Salah.
look at Job 99 with that.
Come on, read that.
Job.
Actually, start at 7.
Job chapter 9, verse 7. Job chapter 9, verse 7, which commandeth the sun, and it riseth not, and sealeth up the stars, which alone spreadeth out the heavens, and treadeth upon the waves of the sea, which maketh Arcturus, Orion, and Pleiades, and the chambers of the south.
Right. So it's going again into these same constellations, the star that's up in the heavens that's being controlled by the Most High. Right. He can open it or he can seal that information. That's what it says in verse 7, which commandeth the sun, and it riseth not, and sealeth up the stars. The Most High can do that. Just like during the time of Joshua, the Most High heard his plea, his prayer, and he allowed the sun to stand still. Right. According to that petition. So the Lord can do these things, but it's his will to spread forth that gift to have understanding and power over these things that he's created. Right now, go to Deuteronomy chapter 4. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 4. And verse 19. Actually, I'm going to start at 14 and then jump down. Everybody got it?
Okay.
It says, and Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that ye might do them in the land whither you go to possess it. Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for you saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image and similitude of any figure, the likeness of a male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. Meaning what? Don't make no graven image. And what? What about this graven image? Something specific that the Most High was warned and told Moses to teach us about these graven images. Okay. Can you have a graven image in your house?
Yeah.
You can. Why? Because you're not what? There you go. That's the answer. That's what the Most High wants us. You cannot have a graven image to worship it. It's all about intent. If you now go into the shop and somebody has a cross or somebody has a fish or something up there, and you go and purchase it with the intent to worship it, you've gone off, right? You may say, hey, I'm going to the thing, I'm going to buy this cross. Somebody say, oh, why is he Pequod in the shop buying a cross? Because Pequod is he's intending to buy that cross to use it as a teaching instrument, right? That's why sometimes you'll see us have a Caesar Borgia picture and they'll be like, oh, look at these guys. They believe in this guy. They believe in the white Jesus. No, we're now using this as a teaching tool to now show others the falsehood in this, right? So your intention is to not worship it. Your intention is not to believe it. Your intention is to do something good with it, right? To now edify your people. So this is what the Most High wants us to make sure that we never forget his commandment and we don't create anything to now replace him in our minds as a form of worship, right? So we got all kind of things, fish, birds, animals, man, woman, whatever, right? None of those things can replace the Most High as a graven image. Now watch this. Verse 19, unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldest be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations under the heaven, right? So the Lord now allows all nations to bear witness to his creation. But to Israel, we were never supposed to go and worship those things. Why was that important? Because the Most High gave us these things to be a guide to us. The sun does things for us. The moon does things for us. The stars as well. They all do things for us to now serve in their seasons. So these are all instruments. If you use them right, if you pay attention and study it, it will now allow you to not even use these things, right? You could go about your merry way in the earth without it. It could be like, what's that guy, Tom Hanks? He was in that movie, Castaway, where he was by himself. If he would now had the spirit of this, he would be able to understand times and seasons, years and months, right? Days of the week. He would be able to understand that according to the Most High's knowledge. Being a castaway with nothing. He's looking up at the moon and he sees a crescent. He said, oh, I'm in the first day of the week. Second day, third day. I'm at the end of the week. It's a half moon on the right side illuminated, right? He could now figure these things out. We could figure these things out even today, right? It could be one of those little tests that you say, I'm not going to use my phone to go and see what day of the week it is. I'm not going to use that to know what time, what month it is. I'm just going to now try to go off the spirit, right? But caution yourself to when you now get gifted with it, that you don't now go out there and start worshiping it, that you now look up at Orion and now know what Orion really means. And you start using it and guiding people, right? It's like some people call you up and like, yo, I had the brother, Manashah was like, yo, got a little tip, make yo, go put some money down on this stock, right? And you start now getting tips and you start figuring certain things out. Guess what happens? You get big-headed. You start thinking, yo, this spirit, this gift I got is now making me some money or is making me come that figure. And then you start trusting in that more than the Most High. That's when it becomes a problem. So that's what the warning was. Unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars and even all the host of heaven, shouldest be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven, right? So this is what we now are trying to make sure that we guide ourselves in and being aware to not fall victim to that. Let me see if I can find this video here. Let's see. Okay, so I think this clip is going to go into some little understanding about when the spring season comes in. They call it the vernal equinox. Like some of these terms most people may not know about. Vernals just deal with spring season, right? Equinox is just about that time where the hours of the day and the hours of night almost mirror up, right? Because we know that sometimes when you go into the summer, the days are longer, and in the winter season, the nights is longer, right? But it gets a part in the year, twice in a year, when those seasons are changing, it now becomes 12 hours and then 12 hours night, 12 hours day, and then it just starts to go forth from there, right? So that's kind of what some of this is going to get into. But also, pay attention, when it goes into, science says that the earth revolves around the sun, but according to the scriptures and the Most High's creation, the earth was the center of creation, right? The sun and the moon and the constellation things were created to serve for the things that's on the earth. So don't get too much drawn off into that, because that is a bone that's a part of this. But I'm gonna see if I can bring this up real quick. Let's see. I'll pause this. Maybe can you see over there?
Yeah.
See if you could turn that up. I want to make sure that there's no echo. Let's see.
You know that Earth orbits the sun, right? And that it takes a full year for our planet to complete its orbit. Earth also
Give me 1 second.
A year, day and night fall into balance, lasting for nearly equal lengths. Known as equinoxes, Latin for equal night, they occur in March and September, and along with solstices, mark the changing of seasons as Earth travels around the sun. Astronomers like to describe the equinox within the
Oh, there are 2 of them. Oh, no.
conceptual celestial sphere. Here, the heavens are projected around the Earth like an enormous planetarium. The model is bisected by the celestial equator, a projection of Earth's own equator. The equinox occurs at the point at which the sun's path, or ecliptic, crosses the celestial equator. In spring, it is known as the vernal equinox, and in fall, the autumnal equinox. The other 2 seasonal points on the sun's path are the 2 solstices. In the northern hemisphere, the summer solstice marks the longest day of the year, while the winter solstice marks the shortest. The seasonal aligning of the sun has been more than just a unique celestial event for humankind throughout history. Ancient sites like Stonehenge in England and Machu Picchu in Peru have well-documented solar alignments during the solstices. Similarly, the equinoxes have been associated with some amazing man-made phenomena. In the ancient Maya city of Chichen Itza, the Great Pyramid known as El Castillo is oriented along cardinal axes. During the equinoxes, shadows cast by the railings create the illusion of a writhing serpent body descending the northern steps where it joins the carved serpent's head at the base of the stairway.
So now when you see that, right, that's real. And that's kind of what you'll see in certain movies where, you know, the normal guidance that the sun and the moon and the constellation gives us, when you now go off with it, they now created this temple and there's someone just sitting there and the light comes down and they're saying, yo, it's like a snake is coming down the side of the temple of the pyramid. And then they started creating pyramids in the form of a snake. That's what you've seen there down there with the Aztec. So it's a real thing that's now providing information on the earth, but then man began to go off with it and do certain things and now remove the Most High out of the way and then now start worshiping these things. And that's why the law has that contained to never have that come to your mind, right? That you start worshiping these things.
The cultural significance of the fall equinox and changing of seasons continues today, especially in the northern hemisphere, where the autumnal equinox occurs around harvest season. In fact, the full moon nearest the autumnal equinox is commonly referred to as the harvest moon. In China and other Asian countries, this time is celebrated with the Mid-Autumnal Festival. The origins are linked to the birth of the moon goddess, and festival traditions revolve around families with reunions and feasts and special moon cakes.
Now, remember when we read in Deuteronomy, it said that it was divided unto all the nations under heaven, right? So it wasn't that the sun and the moon and the constellations were just serving the season for us. All other nations on the planet Earth are doing the same thing. So now you're looking at Moab and them, and they're now keeping their own harvest festivals and now keeping their feasts surrounding the moon, surrounding the sun and the harvest season, right? Not just for Israel. Israel was just given the law to not go off with it like others may do. Everybody on earth is a citizen of earth. Everybody, the same thing. Everybody's going to see the rainbow. Everybody's going to see the cloud. Everyone's going to have that, but everyone's not going to have that wisdom and understanding or what to keep themselves upright in the sight of the Most High, save Israel, right?
In Jewish culture, thanks for the harvest is given during the week-long Feast of the Tabernacles, or Sukkot. Families eat meals in temporary shelters outside, recalling the Israelites' days in the wilderness after the exodus from Egypt.
Right.
Twice
so
a year.
That's what we call Sakawah, right? For the tabernacles. But they now, show, someone else keeping our feast days. But in line with all the other nations doing it, we keep a feast harvest as well. All right. We kept the first fruits and then we kept the ingatherings, centered around the same tools that the Lord has given us on allowing our crops to be fed and sustained.
Day and night fall into balance, lasting for nearly equal lengths. Known as England and Machu Picchu in Pizza, the Great Pyramid known as El Castillo, vision of a writhing serpent body. Sense of the fall equinox and changing of seasons continues today, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, where the autumnal equinox occurs around harvest season. In fact, the full moon nearest the autumnal equinox is commonly referred to as the harvest moon. In China and other Asian countries, this time is celebrated with the Mid-Autumnal Festival. The origins are linked to the birth of the moon goddess, and festival traditions revolve around families with reunions and feasts, and special moon cakes. In Jewish culture, thanks for the harvest is given during the week-long Feast of the Tabernacles, or Sukkot. Families eat meals in temporary shelters outside, recalling the Israelites' days in the wilderness after the exodus from Egypt.
All right. So that's just a little clip. The main thing I wanted to show in there was the season as far as for the vernal and autumn equinox, right? So sometimes you'll hear Elder Zaquan when he goes into it, we just don't keep just a lunar calendar. It's just not based on the lunar calendar. It's also based on the seasons that certain things come in. It's based on the solstices as well, right? So you'll have 2 equinox, you'll have 2 solstices, right? That we also have to keep certain things in alignment. So when the Akim went and did a little bit of the research to understand that spring is coming in a little bit later, okay, our new moon now is going to come in a little bit later as well, but it's going to align everything else up in this season. So this information is given to us by the tools that's given to us by the Most High. Now, we have a lot of different things that the Most High gives us to be able to now interact with him and talk with him, right? The priest had what they call the Urim and the Thummim, right? Which in certain cases, when you see witchcraft and a lot of these entities who deal with things on the left-hand side, what do they usually use? They'll go and have a crystal ball, right? The crystal ball to go and look into the times, right? But they're getting some of this from what? From the scriptures. They're getting this from, on the righteous side, what the Most High gave to the priest in order to communicate with him. But now when the Most High did not want to communicate with you, all that stuff was what? Darkened, right? This goes into what we were talking about before, as far as for your sun and your moon and your stars shall be darkened. Some of it is figurative, some of it is literal. Right? Talking about your wisdom is now gone. When we had that taken away, we didn't have no understanding on what we're supposed to do. Right? Go to 1 Samuel chapter 28. 1 Samuel chapter 28. And I'm going to start at 4. First Samuel 28 and verse 4. Let me know when anybody got it. So it says, and the Philistines gathered themselves together and came and pitched in Shunem. And Saul gathered all Israel together, and they pitched in Gilboa. And when Saul saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart greatly trembled. So now when we usually go into war and we kind of outnumber, what do we normally do? pray to go to the Most High, for the Most High to give us guidance. If we're going to win the war, should we go out and fight, so forth and so on. Let's see what happened. It says, and when Saul inquired of the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by prophets, right? So the Lord can speak to you in a dream or in a vision. But now when Saul prayed, the Most High didn't come to him by vision or dream. Then it says, nor by Urim. So now you can go to the priest and then ask and see what the Most High says, and the Lord would speak through this Urim thing that the priest had on them, right? It would give them a sign, but the Most High wouldn't do that. So now you're not getting it from dreams or visions. You're not getting it from the Urim, from the high priest. Then you go to the where? To the prophets. You act at the seers. You say, hey, I'm going to ask the Most High, or men of the Lord, as they call them. Ask the Most High for me. The Most High was not answering the men of the Lord, right? So you have different ways and methods that you can now communicate with the Most High. And also other fashions, we know that the Lord can also give us the understandings of the heavens. And that's why we said in Job, can you draw out the understanding of the heavens? Can you take the ordinances of what's there? The Lord will take that knowledge away as well, right? So making sure that, I remember we was having this conversation on a side note, as far as for people who deal with certain things on the left-hand side, meaning spirits and witchcraft and things of that nature, because Saul went to those people, right? When you read further down, he went to people who had a familiar spirit to now go and give him the answer when he wasn't getting it from the right place, right? Let's read verse 7. Then Saul said unto his servants, seek me a woman that have a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servant said to him, behold, there is a woman that have a familiar spirit in Endor. Meaning she dealing with things on the left-hand side. She dealing with witchcraft. She ain't going to the Most High, right? She going to Satan. Satan giving her those gifts. So the Most High said, I ain't dealing with you. Prophets don't answer him. I ain't giving you no vision. I ain't going to give you any sign from the priest. He went on the left-hand side. And these things are true. These things actually happen, right? So again, just highlighting how we have different ways and mediums of being able to communicate, and the Lord will give you that gift to understand what you ought to do, like he dealt with the Issacharite brothers in ancient times, to give them that. And we have, some of us have that skill right now today. Right? It's some of us who the Lord is grooming and building up to have skills and understanding of times in heaven, to have skills to deal with things on the earth. We just make sure we try their spirits by the word of the Most High in order to prove them, whether they are of the Most High or whether they are Satan. Because sometimes even men that are in this truth, they go off. That's why you hear brothers say, yo, this other brother coming with doctrines. He coming with doctrines. Because what he's saying is not aligning no more with what scripture is saying. He's veering too far into this thing that he's dealing with and not staying here, right? That's why I usually always say a lot of these prophets, they were in different times dealing with different things, but they all spoke the same thing. Like it says in 1 Corinthians, I think the 10th chapter, 10th verse that we're supposed to do, that we all speak the same thing. All right. So now, one more. Go to Jeremiah. Tenth chapter. Watch this. We usually go to Jeremiah 10 for what? Christmas. Break out Christmas, right? All right, y'all read verse 2. Jeremiah 10 and 2.
Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 2. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen.
Stop, meaning what? Learn not the way of the heathen, meaning what? Follow their customs, follow their practices. Anything that goes against the Most High's custom, the Most High's law, don't follow or learn that way, right? Read on.
And be not dismayed at the signs of heaven.
And be not dismayed or confused or afraid or affrighted at the signs of heaven. Right? Where are the signs of heaven being shown? The same thing that we were reading about before. They're looking at Orion and Pleiades and all these different things and trying to draw wisdom out from them. And they're what? Being dismayed. They're being afraid. right? They start talking about, yeah, in 1,000 years, a comet is going to come and it's going to destroy the earth. Or this thing is going to pass by and it's going to now shake the whole vibration and the energy of the earth. They are the ones that are confused and dismayed and afraid of the signs that they're seeing in heaven, right? But read on.
For the heathen are dismayed at them.
But the heathen are dismayed at them. But we have the sign from where? From the Most High, right here in the scriptures, right? That's where we get our clear understanding from. That's where we get our guidance from. The law. It starts with the law. It don't start with Orion, right? It don't start with Mazatop, right? To say, oh, or the 7 stars, right? Because the 7 stars are just going into these 7 bright stars that's in the heavens, and they give them names, and they now put Greek gods' names behind them, and they deal with all these things. It don't start with that. It don't start with the air. What is it? The year of Aquarius and Pisces and all these different things, right? And they start changing the whole, or guiding, changing, or aligning the whole life for a year based on the year of that Cancer or that Taurus or whatever sign it is. No, the Most High gave us keep this dietary law, right? Keep these ceremonial laws, right? Keep these moral laws. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And then everything else will come into play. Those are the things. Let the heathen be dismayed at them. We should never follow suit. We should not be confused about that, right? So now go to Judges 5:11. Be quiet if you can read that, Baba Kusha.
Judges chapter 5, verse 11. They that are delivered from the noise of archers in the places of drawing water, there shall they rehearse the righteous act of the Lord, even the righteous acts towards the inhabitants of his village in Israel, and his villages in Israel. Then shall the people of the Lord go down to the gates.
Right. They that are delivered from the noise of archers is talking about us, Israel. It's a small little parable that you have to precept to understand that this is speaking about us that are scattered throughout the 4 corners that have now been put in places of captivity. Drawing water, right, is a symbolism of captivity. We're going to be delivered from the noise of archers or the ICBM Mitchells that the Most High has prophesied about in the Old and New Testament in these last days, right? It says, there, wherever we are, they shall rehearse the righteous acts. That's what I'm pulling out. Because right now you may say, well, my brothers HOI, they keeping their Passover on such and such date. They New Year's this date. Or these brothers, they keeping it on such and such date. But you saying, what, April 11th? These brothers keeping over. What are we all doing? We are all rehearsing the righteous acts. No one should point a finger and say, man, them brothers is wicked because they're keeping the Passover here. Or these brothers is wicked because they're keeping their new moon there, because we are all rehearsing the righteous acts, right? I'm pretty sure we can go back in time, go back a few years back, where we probably started the new moon prior to the spring season coming in, right? We probably did that, right? And somebody else was pointing the finger at us and saying, oh, these brothers is bugged out, man. Look, they going off. Look what they're doing, right? But no, we were all rehearsing the righteous acts, right? You may can give guidance to a camp or to a brother, but now it's not to condemn them. It's to say, I understand where they was going off. We too was like that before. Lord's will, they'll see it too. They'll get that understanding later on. Or they have it, but they'll set it in motion for the year coming up, right? They took it to note and they said, okay, fine. Next year when we start planning it out, I'll remember what Kahan such and such or the elder such and such said, and now we'll order everything aright, so that now things is in its proper order within the calendar year. So that's the key, right? We got to rehearse. In order to rehearse, you got to do what? If you're an actor in a play and you reading your lines, what you got to do? You got to study. You got to read your lines. You got to go look in the mirror and say it out loud, right? You got to go and stand in position. Most actors, when they really they playing a part in a movie, you know what they really do? That the part that they're playing or the character they're playing, they have to become it. They have to do method acting. They have to put themselves into that location. They have to put themselves in the heart of the mind of the person they're playing, right? In order to fully engulf it. They can't now just half-ass it and just go there and not fully, because they won't really bring out the full spirit of it. So it's the same thing. When we're rehearsing, we have to become method actors. We have to really put ourselves into that environment mentally and then try to do it physically to the best of your ability. And that's how you fully perfect your craft. That's how you really get on point where you don't forget what the moon signifies, or what the phase means, or what that feast day is, because you have to become ingrained in it. And then after a while, it's like, all right, I got it, right? Now, I was just having this conversation with my brother, and I said, I'll never forget. I remember Angelina Jolie in an interview. They asked her about characters that she's played, and which one, draws to mind of all the characters that she's played at that point. Which one does she recall? And she said, if you are a good actor, you never forget any of your characters because you've become them, right? That's like when Denzel played in Training Day. Denzel had to be a method actor. He had to go into the hood and be around them guys, right? He had to be in that element. So now when you are good, if you've done it for 3 months, 4 months, and it's in your spirit, then you become, that's a part of your spirit to a certain degree, right? That's why you see a lot of divorce and because the spirit in it, you just thinking you acting, you kissing on this woman and everything. There's a spirit involved with that. You still doing this. And what happened, you say, cut, you leave it set, and you still thinking, man, my spirit is involved in this now, right? So it's the same thing. You now get involved. I remember, what's her name? Played in Boys in the Hood. The one, Nia Long. And they was in that movie, I think it was In Too Deep with LL Cool J. And he played the role of God, right? His name was God. And in the interview, LL appears to be a nice person. He was like, no, LL was a bit, because he was like even Offset. He never came out of character. Offset, like you going to go get lunch. He still was in character. Right? So it's like that. This guy's but that's how it was, because he was a good method actor, right? And I'm pretty sure if he had to go and play that role again, he could easily jump back into character because it was a part of him. So for us, this is not just a character for us. This should be who we are, right? This should be our whole DNA as we go. We have now become method actors into the world. We've got the world down packed in method acting. Now we're trying to get back to who we really are and put that to the side so that you don't forget your true spirit that you're walking with day by day, right? So that you don't forget the small things, right? It's small things that I learned in the world that I will just never forget, right? It's just because it's just second nature, right? To be honest, I'll never forget that December 25th is so-called Christmas. I'll never forget it because of what I went through and my upbringing and what I dealt with as in the world. I'll never forget it. As much as I would like to, I will never forget it. I now see some of us, we forget, oh yeah, what day is the Day of Atonement? Oh man, yeah. Oh man, I don't even remember what that day was. It's what? Is it the 8th month? Is it the 9th month? Oh man, see? And that's the part. Or what harvest season is around that time when the Day of Atonement comes in, right? There's a harvest season because that's in the autumn months. So a lot of these things is where we now need to make sure that we come back to fully walking in this truth so that it becomes second nature. For quiet.
Now, what I was gonna say is it's always good to practice using the righteous act
Mm-hmm.
because you will never forget them. And as practicing the righteous act, you will eventually keep getting better and better. It's the same way in the world. If you're doing wickedness, you will never forget it, and it's always gonna be there. That's why the Most High is always trying to prevent us from keep going backward and not keeping the law, because the psychological effect it's gonna have on us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once you have it, it's gonna be tough to break it.
Can't you teach old dog new tricks?
That's what they always do. There's a few sayings that we've learned in the world that not true.
Yeah, a lot.
Conventional wisdom.
Yes, exactly. It sounds good, right? And then sometimes we just act out those sayings, right? We just try to make those sayings be true. So yeah, you know, I'm stuck in my ways because I'm too old now. I've learned so much, you know. So those things are just nice sounding epithets.
You mentioned Angelina Jolie. It seems like every sister, even woman in general, like when they think about her, you talk about that movie she did with Brad, Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah.
They always get like real dark. They get heavy because they think like, what if I was Jennifer Aniston? It was like, like you said, they played those characters, and people say they never stopped being Mr. and Mrs. Smith
Mm-hmm.
while he was with
Oh
the other girl, you know, from Friends,
Jennifer,
Aniston,
yeah.
Jennifer Aniston. So it's like, so every time you bring up that movie, it's like all the women are like,
Yep.
They get real mad at Angelina for that movie.
Yep.
And you see them like at the behind the scenes, they're like cuckoo and caca. It's like,
Yep. But that's what comes with that environment, right? And when you play around with it, you know, it can come and bite you a lot. Yeah. All right. So with that, anybody got any other scripts they want to pull, bring out? What time is it? So yeah, start. Oh, Khan.
Wisdom of Solomon 7.
One of my favorites was in Solomon 7.
That's what you were saying earlier about us being mindful that all wisdom comes from the Most High. Even
Mhm.
when man thinks they come to it on their own. Even in the world, the Most High even directs their steps too.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the heathen and our people in the world. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 7, it reads, I'm starting from 17. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 7, verse 17. But he had given me certain knowledge of the things that are, namely, to know the world was made and the operation of the elements, the beginning, ending, and midst of times, the alterations of the turning of the sun and the change of seasons, the circuits of years and the positions of stars, the natures of living creatures and the furies of wild beasts, the violence of winds and the reasonings of men, the diversities of plants and the virtues of roots, 21. And all such things that are either secret or manifest, them I know. So Solomon was like what they call like a savant for real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this guy was like a professional. He put in that list. He was an herbalist, botanist, astronomist,
Biologist.
This is that is.
Yeah.
Zoologist, right? And it includes what we're talking about now as far as the
Astrologist.
astronomist.
Wisdom of Solomon 7:17 to 21.
But I was going to just piggyback or piggyback on what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Javier. All wisdom comes from the Most High. Who we are and what we are is because of the law of the Most High.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing else that we know comes from anybody else or anywhere else. Like what makes Israel what Israel is, a nation, is the law. So whenever we break away, or because we agree, the Most High give us the agreement, and we agree to keep them. And when we violate those laws and go away, then we get taken out from that community or from that nation that the Most High has chosen us. So we can't be anything else other than the law, and that's what makes a nation who they are. The law defines their value. Whatever they have, this is based on the law.
I'm gonna go off of what saying that same chapter Kahan just pulled. In the 7th chapter, I'm gonna jump down to 28. It says, Wisdom of Solomon 7:28, for God loveth none but him that dwelleth with wisdom. Right? So if you're not dwelling with the wisdom and knowledge of the Most High, the Lord don't love you. He ain't dealing with you on that level, right? Key on that level. Verse 29, for she is more beautiful than the sun, and above all the orders of stars. Being compared with the light, she is found before it. Then it says, for after this cometh night, meaning after you leave wisdom, which is the brightest light the Most High is looking at, then it's like night. Then you got to fall off, right? That's the highest pinnacle that you're going to look there to come touch to the Most High. Then it says, but vice shall not prevail against wisdom, right? Anything is not going to prevail against wisdom. I don't care what other thing that's out there. It's not going to supersede or prevail. That's why when you have these other people, they come with these other doctrines or these other books or these other theories or what have you, is to do what? To come against the Most High's real true light, which is the wisdom, right? That's why it kind of says, and when you get in the kingdom, you're going to not need no sun. There should be no light there. It's talking about you ain't going to need these other things. The Most High's wisdom is going to dwell with us, and we're going to forever be perfect and walking in that light. We're going to need nothing else. But today, that's what men look for. They want to go find some other light, find some other source other than the Most High.
Romans 1:25, right? Who changed the truth of the Most High into a lie?
Yeah. Con. Con.
Sorry. When you read the first part 30, it made me really think when it says, after this cometh night. Because you have a lot of Esau, heathen in general, they have doctrines about what happened before the light was made. You had a world before the light came into being. And you see that in the left-hand stuff, and you even see it like in the pop culture stuff, like the Thor movie.
Yeah.
The Dark Elves or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's dealing with that saying like left-handed stuff. Let's say this is when Lilith came to be or whatever, or the one who Adam's other wife, and they had stuff going on before the light was made. It's like they take that darkness and like go with it. Well, we read here, wisdom is before the night, before the light. She's there before the creation even began. So it's showing like it's still underneath. They'll try to put that night above.
Mm-hmm. Con. All right. So with that, we're going to close out the night's new moon service. Keep in mind, even though this is the 7th day Sabbath, this is a new moon feast day, which means, of course, if you don't know, that you can cook on this day. So when you're getting up and you're keeping it, we're doing the Sabbath service, and you now think you got to get your light victuals, but on this day you are allowed to go and cook, kindle a fire, prepare a nice meal, really get into it like you would normally do on a regular day. On the feast day that falls on the Sabbath day, this is what the Most High's ordinances allows us or tells us that we should do. Provide that offering on that day, right? So do not feel, that you cannot do it. According to the scriptures, we are to feast on all of the Most High's feast days, even though it falls on a 7th day Sabbath. We still keep the Sabbath in its order as far as for not doing our own pleasures and going out and doing certain things that are not spiritual or not going to uplift us as a nation, but we're allowed to feast on this day. All right. So if you weren't dialed in late, remembering this is not the beginning of our year. The spring season has not come in yet. It comes in roughly around March 2020, March 20th or the 21st. That now signifies when that new moon that follows in now, the season that has now begun, that's when we're going to keep the beginning of our year, which will fall on April 11th on a Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken. Just checking. April 11th on a Sunday night. And then 2 weeks following after that will be the Passover, April 25th on a Sunday night. Again, for those who, had to take off or make early provisions due to work, again, this is a rehearsal. Most High knows our hearts and intentions. Like I said, there's other camps who are still keeping it because of certain things that they may have already put in motion. But also just keep in mind the spirit involved in and why we do things and how we're trying to elevate every day, every month, every year to draw closer to the Most High's true spirit in His image. All right.
In the same token too, I want to say that it's all when we rehearsing, we can mess up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like you said earlier, everybody fell at something. We gonna fail at something.
Right.
And the key is not the failing. What worse is failing to not deal with the failure effectively.
Mm-hmm.
That's the worse than the failure itself, because we're gonna mess up.
Done. All right. So just as a mental note also for the Sabbath service this morning, we'll be in the book of Joshua, chapters 21 and 22. Again, that's Joshua chapters 21 and 22 for this morning's Sabbath service. So if you got time and you want to read up early in the morning, by all means do so. But we will definitely be conducting it then. So again, happy new moon, Ashar Shabbat. Peace and blessings to the brothers and sisters. Most High's will. Everybody will enjoy this day. I know it's it's almost getting to that point. The temperature's still fluctuating here and there. It was nice, from what I hear, the past couple days might drop down a little bit next week, but we're still waiting on season and everything to come into full fruition. So stay tuned for the closing prayers. And again, Shalom and happy new moon. Barakatha Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathalanawa, Par Yahagapin, Thawada Aman, La Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Ath Yasha'ala. Again, English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it, to Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Hey, Madu, I put you on your Jerusalem stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Shammai, Lanawa, Aitha, Yun Yun, Aitha, Shalak, Mayaka'ala, Waha'alahayim, Tazudakim, La, Shema'ayim, Barak, Rapah, Magun, Wahakazayat, Banya, Yasha'ala, Washalak, Lanawa, Rabiam, Kakama, Rabiam, Da'aith, Rabiam, Bayana, Rabiam, Sabalanwa, Rabiam, Amawan, Rabiim, Aqua, Rabiim, Ahabiim, Rabiim, Haganah, Rachanaya, Wasalat, Ko, Kata Ayamnawa, Mahaakim, Wa'akiwath, Wayasha'ala, Thum Yad, Wa'iwalam, Bahasham, Yahushai, Thawada, Amun. Most High, in the name of Christ, please listen to us now, right now. Send Michael and the righteous powers or angels to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection. And forgive all our sins for the brothers and sisters in Israel, always and forever. In the name of Yahushua, thank you, so be it. Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Barak Nawa, Wayasha'ala, Wabati Asaparim, Shema, Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Hayanawa, Yahweh, Akhar. All right, prayer for the food. Yahweh, got a wall, Bahasham, Adawanya, Yahushai, Babakushah, Barak, Ma'akal, Yanawa, Shatayawa, Yanawa, Yayan, Yanawa, Lakam, Yanawa, Shakara, Yanawa, Zakad, Shaw, Hayarak, Kadash, Bahasham, Yahushai, Kawada, Amun. All right. Shalom, Yasha'Allah, Ashar Kadash, happy new moon. Most High's will, everybody enjoys the rest of the day. See you for the Sabbath service this morning. Shalom.